This is Catholic Forum. I'm Bob Krebs. A few months ago, I interviewed Bear Wozniak about his new book. During that interview, he happened to mention that he was a Benedictine Oblate, something that I'd never heard of before. A few days later, I just happened to be looking at the St. Benedict Church Bulletin, and there was an announcement about an upcoming meeting where the Benedictine Oblates would be discussed, and the presenter would be Cyndy Ingram. So I invited Cyndy to be on Catholic Forum so we could all learn more about the Benedictine Oblates. And Cyndy, thanks so much for being here with us today.
You're welcome, Bob.
We're going to talk about St. Benedict, about the Oblates, and so forth. Before we do, tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would, please.
Okay, I think I'll skip all the beginnings. I was a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force, and we traveled around a lot. And then we ended back up at my grandmother's house in Odenton, Maryland. And we lived there for many years. Then, when I married my husband, he was in the Air Force, so we lived in Florida for a little while. Then we moved back up here and built a house behind his parents' house and lived in Millersville, Maryland. And he always talked about how wonderful the Eastern Shore was.
Mm-hmm.
He had an opportunity after he worked at Reliable Contracting to come over here to David A. Bramble Contracting. And so we moved over here to the beautiful, pleasant, quiet Eastern Shore,
Mm-hmm.
and we have never regretted our decision. So my job brought me to a new job, and I checked out the Benedictine School for exceptional children. And it was run originally and founded by the Benedictine sisters. And so when I came for my interview and then I was accepted and started working, I realized there were little chapels at different places in the school. And I was so thrilled to be able to have my faith with me during the day, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I ended up over here and how I met the sisters.
So the Benedictine school, which is still in existence, but the sisters no longer run it, that's in Ridgely, Maryland. And also the St. Benedict's Church is in Ridgely, Maryland, which, is, as you mentioned, is on the beautiful Maryland Eastern Shore that we all love. And what was your position at the school?
Well, I started out as a receptionist because that was the job that was open.
Right.
And I was asked about a month later if I would work in the foundation office. So I said, well, what does that entail? I'll take the duties home and pray on it. And so I asked God, is this where you want me to go? And
Mm.
he said, yes. So I worked in the foundation office for 19 years. Sister Jeanette was the director of the school at the time. She has since passed away, and as you say, it's now not run by the sisters,
Right.
but with a lot of their charism.
Right. Now, the sisters, many of our listeners might, of course, know about the sisters because for many years they were at St. Elizabeth Elementary School and High School in Wilmington. And they're just a great group of sisters. They moved, well, I guess it was been about, what, 5 or 8 years ago? They moved from Ridgely, Maryland to Newark, Delaware, just because their numbers had dwindled and because they wanted to be closer to healthcare because they're also an aging group. But they're still there in Newark, Delaware, by a Holy Family Parish, and
Yes,
still very active and still a blessing to our diocese.
definitely.
Yeah. So, Cindy, tell
And
us who was Saint Benedict.
Saint Benedict was born in 480, and he was trying to be a very spiritual person, like most of us try to be. Except Rome was very chaotic at the time, and I don't think he felt like he could do a good service for himself. So he moved, and he became a hermit for quite a bit. And he was living alone, but of course, as usually happens, somebody found him and people were bringing bread to him and hanging a basket down so he could get the bread. And after they spoke with him and realized he had a lot of wisdom, I'm sure they wanted to know more. And so eventually he opened a monastery. And as may happen many places, sometimes there were hard things happening in the monasteries, different personalities. And so he opened several different ones. And now he is known as the father of Western monasticism because people took his rule. He wrote a rule, which he calls a very small rule for beginners, and they followed it and felt like it made a lot of common sense, and that's how it all began.
Yeah, so the whole idea of monasteries and abbots and that sort of thing for men and women, that was all foreign. That was all unknown until Saint Benedict came around.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So how
His,
would go ahead? I'm sorry, Cindy.
I'm sorry. His most well-known monastery is Monte Cassino. It suffered a very much damage during World War II, but was built back up. They were very lucky they had the plans from the original building that was there, and so it's going strong today.
So how would you describe Benedictine spirituality?
I think spirituality is our attitudes and our actions. And I think Benedictine spirituality is extraordinary in transforming our lives and in enabling us to be within a community. You know, we all grow up in the community of our family. We have communities of work friends. We have friends that we've made in our neighborhoods. And this is a community of trying to glorify God and keeping God at the forefront of all that we do and seeing the God in each person.
There's also an aspect of hospitality that is kind of one of the basis of Benedictine spirituality. Talk a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Sure, I experienced radical hospitality when I was first working there. One of the sisters was chatting with me and said, "Well, why don't you come over on Wednesdays and go to prayer with us?" And I said, "Well, I kind of have to be home to make dinner." And so she dropped it, and then she came later, a few weeks later, and said a similar invitation. And then she said, "Well, you know, you might enjoy being a Benedictine Oblate." And I said, "Oh, sister, I'm so sorry. I can't join the monastery because I'm married." And she laughed, and then I laughed when I realized what an oblate was after we had a discussion. But I went over there for praise, and I was never left alone to wonder what I was supposed to be doing or where I was supposed to be looking in the book. I sat down in the chapel, and a sister sat down beside me, and she showed me what page we were on. So it would be just like if you went into an unfamiliar area, if all of a sudden a guide was right there to help you with everything. And to me, that was the radical hospitality. And thankfully, I think I've learned how to do it myself, so I can pass that along as well.
So, what is it that attracted you personally to this Benedictine spirituality?
Well, I had gone to a spiritual director, and we were talking about, you know, how I asked her, forget God in between all the little things that you're doing during the day. So her suggestion to me was just say things like, "Okay, God, I'm going to be doing this now. You know, uh, keep him with you in your mind and your spirit." But with the Benedict rule, it's much easier for me to feel like he is always there. I know he's always there, but I didn't always feel it, and I allowed myself to be overcome by all those daily things that we get caught up in, such as when you do the dishes at night. You're not just doing a rote thing that you have to do every night and it's boring, and but somebody has to do it. You're able to say, I'm going to treat these dishes like the chalice on the altar, and I'm doing this for my family so that they have sparkling dishes that make them want to eat their meal. So it's more of a inclusion of God in everything. So I think that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, that certainly does make bringing God and spirituality into your everyday life, into your everyday tasks that
Yes.
might seem to be maybe not very pleasant,
Yeah.
but if you make it into a prayer, it certainly becomes pleasant after that. So yeah. Uh,
Yes.
my guest today on Catholic Forum is Cyndy Ingram. She's an oblate of St. Benedict, a Benedictine Oblate, and we're talking about St. Benedict and about the Oblate. So, Cyndy, you mentioned that sister invited you to become an Oblate, and you didn't really know what that was. So you kind of said, "No, listen, I'm married. I can't join the monastery." But you can be an oblate if you're a lay person, a married person. So what is a Benedictine oblate?
A lot of other orders have third orders or tertiaries. So a Benedictine oblate is a man or a woman. They can be of any denomination. They don't have to just be Catholic. They can be Methodist, Episcopalian. If they have an interest or desire, they can come to one of our meetings, and they will be welcomed with hospitality, and they can listen and hear what we do and see if it suits them. And Benedict says, someone that wants to enter the monastery must knock many times. And so they can come and visit and be part of the group. And let's say they might decide that this is the thing they want to do. So then after about a year, we have a program. We call it a novice program, but it's not being a novice to the monastery.
Right.
It's just being a novice to being an oblate. And you will do some formal studying for the next year and learn different parts of the Rule of Benedict. And then you can make a choice. And um, we make a promise excuse me, yes, we make a promise to be an oblate. The sisters make vows. And so we renew our promise each year. Um, and that our desire is to continue. And I find that as you continue, there's always something else to learn from the same words that are in the rule. Something you'll get a different part of your life, and then that will speak to you a different way.
So it's not just a club that you can just join. You have to actually discern, and then you have to take a period of study, and then you can join. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. How many oblates are there in your group?
In our group, we have about 15, 16. We have about three or four new inquirers in the Ridgely group. In the Newark group, it's about the same, and
Mm-hmm.
they have just had two or three new inquirers. Um, we total at the Ridgely group about 30, but many of our oblates have gotten older. They might be homebound. And so we keep them connected. They stay on our email list. And so they're really part of what we do. We connect with them on birthdays or special occasions. And so if you don't want to unbecome an oblate, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You have to be at the meeting particularly.
So, how often are the meetings, and what are your meetings like?
We have our meetings in Ridgely usually on the second Saturday of the month. It kind of depends on St. Benedict Church schedule. Sometimes they're having something, and we might have to go from the hall to a great room or to a classroom, or we might have to schedule for the first Saturday of the month. But generally, it's the second Saturday of the month. We meet at 9:30. We get all of our things settled and ready to go, and then our meeting usually lasts till about 12:30, sometimes 1 o'clock if we have a lot of things to speak about. We have a topic speaker. Sometimes we have two so far this year. That will be one will be speaking on the Eucharist, since we're doing the Eucharist in the parish and in the diocese, and another will be speaking on humility. We also study a book. This year we're going to study Wisdom Distilled from the Daily, Living the Rule of St. Benedict Today by Sister Joan Chittister. And we'll read chapters, and then at a meeting, we'll just have a discussion of the chapter that week.
Mm-hmm.
And so we try to have a book that will enhance the things that we're learning. We At the beginning of a meeting, we always have the Liturgy of the Hours. That's the prayer of the Universal Church, but each monastery may have the prayer set up in a little bit different way. But we follow kind of the same process with the Psalms and with the different readings.
Mm-hmm.
We also read from the rule that day. Some of the rule books and commentaries are set up with a certain rule each day all the way through the year, so that you can go through the rule, St. Benedict's rule, 3 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll always find something new that you missed the other time.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily do this every meeting, but we're also encouraged to do Lectio Divina, which is holy reading. So when you're reading a passage from the Bible, you go through certain steps so that it helps you to be closer to the Word and that moment in time. And sometimes we do it at a meeting as a practice for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so we open and close the meeting with a prayer. We talk about whose birthdays it is, who has an occasion, and who needs prayer, so that we can keep people in prayer. That's generally.
So there is a little
Yes.
socialness to it as well. It's not all strictly prayer.
No, no.
Do
And
you have food or anything or snacks or?
yes, we have food teams, and so each time a different team brings what they think would be good things to eat. Sometimes when no one's available, we'll just say, everybody bring your lunch this time, and people
Mm-hmm.
can bring their bag lunch. But we sit and chat with each other in groups during lunch. And sometimes, if it's going to be a long meeting, we'll eat and have the meeting at the same time. And we like to call them gatherings,
Mm-hmm.
because we're gathering together. We're not doing a formal meeting and
Right.
deciding things for the world.
Yeah. Right. It's how has being an oblate changed people? I guess let me rephrase that question. What do you want the members, the oblates, to take away from being an oblate?
I'll use myself as a tiny example. Um, Before, when I was working on the other side of the bridge, worked in a building that had an elevator, and I would push the button for the elevator. When the door started to open, I'd go to bust right in, and of course, sometimes people are coming out. And now I push the button, I step back, I wait to see if anyone's coming out. So I think it's generally seeing other people more clearly rather than your own self and your own agenda. Uh, that's part of the hospitality that you see.
Right.
If you're on the deck at a party and it's a big to do and there's chairs and people and you see someone walking in looking a little lost and you see a chair, grab that chair and put it over at the table and welcome them to your table so that people feel acknowledged and seen. And for me, that's been a big item.
It's little things like that mean a lot in the long run. I was going to ask you about why St. Benedict is so popular in Ridgely and also in Newark, but we kind of answered that question. It's because the sisters were in Ridgely and now they're in Newark. So those are little enclaves of Benedictine Oblates in those two areas. But if someone maybe they're not near Ridgely, Maryland, or Newark, Delaware, and they'd like to learn more about the Oblates, or about St. Benedict in general, and about the Oblates in particular, where can they go for that information?
Okay, if you just type in a search engine, St. Benedict, or St. Benedict of Nursia, if you want to get a little more exact,
Right.
many things will come up because I did that myself when I was becoming interested, and I printed out so much that I just had reading material for months. Also, I'll give you a couple of places. Our own sisters are osbdelaware.org. And then when you get onto their site, there's a section that says Oblates, and it tells you about Oblates. So anywhere you might be, if you type Benedictine sisters or Benedictine monks, you will call up a monastery or an abbey. And within their site, they usually have a place that you can click on Oblates so you can check out that group. There's one in Latrobe. So if you do Latrobe, if you live on the other side of the bridge, there are several Benedictine sisters. There's one in Lutherville, one in Baltimore. That brings me to a group called NABOD, NAABOD.org. That's the North American Association of Benedictine Oblate Directors. And they have all the monasteries in the United States listed. And we are considered the Northeast region. And this year on October 7th at St. Benedict Church in the Hall, we're having the Northeast Oblate Regional Meeting.
Oh.
So the different regions get together and have meetings and discuss what's going on in their areas.
Interesting.
There's also AmericanBenedictine.org, and all the monasteries are listed in there, and you can click on the monastery there. I wanted to say we have an oblate who lives in Silver Spring, Maryland, and we had another one that was closer to the DC area, and for them coming out to our group was more convenient. But there's also St. Anselm in Washington DC, and they have an oblate group, so it's very easy to find someone pretty close.
Awesome. Very good. Well, Cyndy, thanks for enlightening us, and thanks for taking the time to be with us on Catholic Forum today. God bless you and your work and your group.
And God bless you for sharing information with everyone. And I would like to throw out a huge thanks to all the sisters and all our oblates because they were all praying for me today. I feel like it worked. It worked inside me, so I'm hoping it for everyone else.
Absolutely. Thanks, Cyndy.